I'm so excited to introduce Kristin Reddick on the show today to discuss workplace trauma, and a topic that I think is really something that we don't talk about enough. And it's important that we name this for so many people out there who are struggling with toxic work environments and trying to figure out how to navigate those spaces. Kristin is a clinical mental health counselor and has over 14 years experience in the financial services industry before she became a mental health therapist. And so we are going to hop right in. You can find Kristin on LinkedIn at Kristin, Kristin-C-Reddick, Reddick. And Kristin also often runs career transitions therapy groups. And you can reach her at Kristin, again, Kristin, at Nour counseling.com. All right, let's hop right in. Kristin Reddick in the
Hello.
house. I'm so excited to
Thank
have
you,
you
my
here.
friend.
I'm so excited to
I'm
have you
excited to be
here.
here.
Can we can we talk about how we met for just a
Absolutely.
second?
Do you want me to tell the story?
You were in my
Okay.
class.
You want me
You tell the
to?
story
Okay.
if you want. You go ahead.
So it was funny enough, a group class, and Mona, you were partnering with my professor to help because our class was so large, our cohort was so large, and so we met through school, and I feel like you're a godsend, to be honest. You were there by design.
Back at you. It's one of those things where the class got I was helping to teach a graduate class of counseling students, who are training to be mental health therapists. This is a few years back, and at the same time, I had this inkling to start a clinical mental health group practice. They literally just split the class in half, and you and another student, I said, "Hey, these are superstars. I can't not work with you. I can't, like, I couldn't imagine an end to seeing you every week." So I said, do you want to come do your training at this group practice that hasn't even formed yet? And you said yes. And so from that, you immediately started seeing
Yeah,
clients as a mental health practitioner in training. And, that was really your first workplace in terms of the counseling world, from what
absolutely.
I understand. And and so then you started having clients coming to you with this very topic that we're getting ready
Mhm.
to talk about, with workplace trauma. So I'd love to just hear from you how this came to be that you became really an expert in this
Yeah,
topic of workplace trauma that's happening
yeah.
everywhere. I mean, it seems like everywhere I turn around, I'm hearing about people having beyond like a bad work experience, but really, really, really coming out of this traumatized. So, how did this come to be for
Absolutely.
you,
So a little
Kristen?
bit about my background. I worked 14 and a half years in the financial services industry, which, as you can imagine, is a fast-paced, high-stress environment. And within that environment, I, one, experienced workplace trauma, but my colleagues around me, I noticed them experiencing workplace trauma. It was unrealistic expectations and demands. It was a lot of strife and confusion around who's on first and who to do what. And, so it kind of fell into my lap, not to mention while I was working with one of my employers, I was a part of an employee resource group, and I was one of the heads of professional development for this employee resource group. And so I was also able to engage with people from all parts of the organization, not just within my building. And they were also going through a lot of microaggressions or just aggressions. And, they would talk about them and we would
Mhm.
share them in a safe space. And so when I transitioned into counseling, that became like I don't know, a motivation for me. I wanted to be that safe place for a lot of people who didn't know where to turn. A lot of times your employer will gaslight you into making you seem as if this is normal. These expectations are normal. for you to be on call 24/7, for instance, or, what have you, for you to be responsive within a certain time period when we are all actually human. And I blame a lot of it on our capitalistic society, and the fact that they expect so much output from a human being. So it really did became a labor of love for me, just from my own experience, and then the ones around me, the people around me. And so now I'm starting to
Mhm.
see more and more clients, facing these things. And even if they come to me for a different purpose, as we start having these conversations, sure enough, there's been examples of workplace trauma or microaggressions that they're processing and that they're going through as well.
And it's interesting because you're saying that people will come in to see you maybe about something else, maybe anxiety or depression, and not even realize that they're in a toxic work
Mhm.
environment. I don't use that word lightly because it's been so
Mhm.
normalized, and that these type of expectations have been normalized, and then we can internalize it and think, oh, there's something wrong with me because I'm not meeting expectations that really aren't designed for a
Right.
person, a person,
Human, right.
like an
Right.
actual real
Right.
human. Right. We're not human beings. We're expected to be
Mhm.
human doings. And and then when we're not able to press pause and just be a person, then somehow or another that means there's something wrong with
Mhm.
me. And now that there's something wrong with me, now I have all these other symptoms like I'm anxious or I'm depressed um or I feel disconnected. Um or I feel like I don't belong and I don't really even understand why. That's the messaging that I hear from so
Mhm.
many people. They're not even putting it together and making the bridge between how they're feeling and the environments that they're in.
Absolutely. Absolutely, I have to agree. And a lot of times you can see the aha moment in session when we start talking about it and talking around it, and then all of a sudden they're just like, "Oh, I didn't think about that. Oh, wow, wait.
Mm.
Yeah." It's where you're working. It's who you're working with. It's the environment that you're in at least 40 hours out the week. And that can be a remote environment or some people who are physically in an office building. It doesn't matter. They're still experiencing a lot of these. You would think people who work remote, they will have less traumatic experiences, but no, it's across the boards.
I cannot tell you the number of people, of friends, family, um, clients, colleagues, myself, right, who have worked remotely and are experiencing some form of cyberbullying from their
Mhm.
leadership teams. Leadership, I'm trying not to do air quotes, but if I did, it would be really heavy on the quotes. Um, Not the kind of leadership that I like to
Mhm.
subscribe to, at least. And that can show up in the form of emails after email, like blasting them with emails or on, Slack or on like some kind of
Mhm.
messaging system or on text and texting them at 11:30 at night, expecting these
Mhm.
are real stories. I'm not exaggerating here. Texting at 11:30 at night. And I've talked to folks who said, oh, I had to get up and because I heard my Slack going off. I'm like,
Mhm.
what? Why do you have why do they have access to you at that hour? And they're like, well, if I don't, then I'm going to be exiled from the kingdom. I
Mhm.
mean, that's how
That's what it
that's
seems
how
like,
they
yeah.
think of it, and the cost is so high for so many people because most of us don't have the luxury of not having, some kind of income, but beyond income, um, it's also like a lot of us really do and like want to be feel passionately about having a
Yes.
career. It's not necessarily about that, but there's like something else that's stolen
Mhm.
from us when and from folks, right? When we experience these kinds of expectations that are unrealistic and are harmful and then when we don't or when we're scared that we might not, there is there's the threat of some kind of
Some
violence.
retaliation.
And I was just speaking to someone else about this
Mhm,
earlier. Yeah, that violence can show up in so many forms. It's not necessarily
mhm.
physical
It could be
violence.
covert. It can be you're passed up on a position. It could be you don't receive as big of a bonus as your colleagues. Um, and not to mention when you were saying how, violence will show up, um, these could be either from air quotes leaders or even your colleagues. This violence, because your colleagues can also
Mhm.
perpetrate the same system that's already in place that they see from leadership. Like, "Oh, okay, you aren't on when you should have been on. You're my colleague. How do you know my hours? Why are you saying I should have been on, signed in and doing work? Maybe I was taking a break. Maybe I had a long meeting and I needed to go and eat some food like a normal human being." So it doesn't necessarily have to just come from leadership. This violence can come from top down, sideways, vertical. Yeah.
I think even just the idea that there is a top down, that there is this hierarchy, um, speaks to the power
Mhm.
dynamics in itself. And, you know, with power comes
Mhm.
responsibility. And when you have leadership who is irresponsible with their power, anybody who's irresponsible with their power has now the ability to create
Mhm.
harm. And so I've had so many people say, "Well, how do I know that I'm going to be working for an employer like that? Like, how can I avoid it?" Is the question that so many people have. Or when they're looking for a new job, they're either
Yeah.
scared to leave because they don't know that, they'll make as much money, or they're scared to even start interviewing because they don't want their employer to find out. Or they're like, even if it sounds great initially, this company sounded really great initially as
Mhm.
well. And then within a few months or, however long period of time, things turned, um, and they're like, "I don't want that to happen again. At least this is the
Mhm.
devil I
Mhm.
know." I hear a lot of
Mhm.
people say that. So, you know, how can people vet out future
Yeah,
employers?
absolutely. So, one of the things that I do with a lot of my clients, because as you know, I love to do career counseling, is I encourage them that during that interview process, yes, you are being interviewed, but you're interviewing that employer just as much to see if it's a good fit. And so I encourage them to ask certain questions. So, one of those questions that I encourage them to think of, bringing up is, why is this position vacant? Right? That helps you to open up the conversation about maybe the dynamics of the team. Or is it, they chose to leave, they were let go? Is this a new position that was created because of the intake of how many more folks you have? Why is this position now available? Another resource that I really love to push is Glassdoor. I love Glassdoor. It allows you to get some behind the scenes information about the employer and how the employees truly feel. And then lastly, I also encourage them to seek out informational interviews with people who may already be on that team. So you can ask, is there someone on this team that I might be able to talk to for about 10 to 15 minutes for an informational interview? Or if you don't have that um, inside look as far as like the employer goes, you can ask around as far as, well, what about this field? How does this field feel? Because there are certain careers that lean more into a toxic work environment. If it's a really fast paced work environment or a high stress work environment, it's easy to become more toxic than more slower paced work environments. So you can also just do research in regards to like that career field if you don't have access to do like informational interviews with people who are already in that position. Another way to be able to set up an informational interview is through LinkedIn. You can search through LinkedIn for people who may be already working for that company in that position and just try to connect and see if they'll be interested in, speaking with you for you to learn a little bit more. And hopefully they'll, respond back and be able to give you some real tips and information.
I love the question, "Why is this
Mhm.
position vacant?"
Yeah, how did this position come about? Um, You
Yeah, there you
know,
go.
and then also I think to go along with that, another question that I encourage to help vet it out is, what does success look like in this role? You can hear based off of their response what their
Yes.
expectations are and whether or not they're realistic.
That is an amazing question too, and one of the things that I noticed, at least with the people that were coming to see you, is the prevalence of Black
Mhm,
women who are experiencing
mhm,
workplace trauma.
mhm. I think because of the intersectionality, they're carrying multiple marginalized identities that they feel it from multiple angles. So it's not, just
Mhm.
a human being thing, right? But they're also a woman. So now you have the dynamic of male to woman. And then not only that, but they're a Black woman. So then you're bringing in the ethnicity of it. And so um, when you have multiple marginalized identities, I do feel as if the microaggressions can come in many different forms from many different sides, and they feel it more. Not to mention, and this is something that I was actually talking to a client about the other night, within the Black diaspora, we are taught at a young age you have to excel because your Caucasian counterpart, they are already in that door. So for you to make it to that door, you have to be twice as good just to be able to make it into that door. And so from a young age, I would say
Mhm.
even pre-kindergarten, we are already taught to excel and to be twice as good if we want to seek success.
Being in a job and feeling like you don't get to make the same kind of
Mhm,
mistakes that maybe your white
mhm,
counterparts do, or your straight
mhm,
counterparts do, or your male counterparts
mhm,
get to make, for example. Those luxuries are not afforded to
mhm.
Black women specifically, and to any marginalized population. Um, and so that creates a certain amount of, like I said,
Yes.
hypervigilance. And when that happens, that fight or flight part of the brain is on high alert to make sure that it's ready in case there's some kind of
Mhm,
danger, and it can prepare the body to go into fight, flight, freeze,
mhm,
fawn mode. Um, if people haven't heard of fawn mode, that basically means like soothing somebody else, like, oh no, it's okay. I'm not upset about that. Or no, yeah, I can
mhm,
get that deadline. Sure, of course I can do that. Like putting somebody else's comfort above your own, oftentimes is what
mhm.
fawning looks like. Um, when the person feels a sense of danger. And so, no wonder we are seeing people coming in, an influx of people coming into counseling, particular as counseling has become
Yeah.
more accessible to folks, not completely, but therapy has become more accessible to folks. And the stigmas are starting to break down within many of our communities, even in my own community. I can say that, counseling was not even a real thing until a few years ago. And so people are starting to show up more, and it's no wonder that they're feeling
Mhm.
anxious. I mean, particularly anxiety is the one that I see the most. I'm curious about what
I
you
see
see.
mostly anxiety. For some clients, I may see depression if there was some type of situation that happened in the past that they can't move beyond. But mostly anxiety in regards to
Yeah.
what's going to happen. Am I going to be let go? Am I going to get this opportunity? What does my future look like within this company? And when you were just speaking, I was also thinking about how isolated these people feel that come to me because they may be the only Black woman on leadership in that space, or they may be the only Black woman on that team, and it's very isolating for them. And so then they have a sense of, am I sane? So they'll come in questioning their sanity, like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, you make sense. You don't have to ask whether or not you make sense. I'll let you know if I don't understand something. And it just in me saying that validates them, like, oh, okay, thank you. I'm like, you're welcome.
Because there's nobody in that space
Mhm,
that's affirming their experience. And they might not even know their experience because they're not safe to necessarily, or not necessarily safe
mhm,
to share it. When we look at the four different types of
mhm.
belonging: self, interpersonal, community
Yeah.
belonging, universal belonging, I can't tell you, Kristen, the number of people that I've met with, including myself at times in the past, where either have been laid off or really, really made to feel isolated in the workplace, or they had to, they found another job and had to quit and almost like cut ties with their former job. And all four types of belonging get
Yes.
hit with workplace
Yes.
trauma. There's an opportunity for that because it can be, I don't feel like I can be myself. And so I have to self abandon in order to survive this particular
Mhm.
space. I don't feel like I can trust a one on one friendship, or I have to give that friendship up that I might have had because I don't know how that might get used against me, or I just have to cut ties altogether with that workplace, and that friend that I have is still activating for me when they talk
Mm.
about the workplace. There are different ways that it can happen. Also, like, I don't feel like I'm a part of this community, or if I was a part of this community and now I have to leave, now there's
Yep.
that loss. And then also, so many people find purpose in the work that they're
Yes.
doing. Not everybody is going to work just to make ends meet for that sole purpose. Many people are going to work because it is like you and I
Mhm.
are doing. We're passionate about the contributions that we're making. This is a field that we've
Mhm.
chosen with tremendous amount of thought, or that we felt called to be a
Mhm.
part of.
When you were mentioning, like, your sense of self, I'm gonna share with you a quick story. When I was, in my, early 20s, mid-20s, I will say, early in the career within financial services, I was working for an employer that was like they are the number one 401(k) provider. And I tried to emulate what I would see in the office, and I would dress in, suits maybe that were black or blue or just a lot of neutral tones. And one of my friends at the time, she started to notice what I was wearing, and she was like, "Why are you wearing that?" And I was like, "Oh, this is just, what I wear to work." And it was like on the weekend or something. "This is what I wear to work, but I decided to wear it out with you." And she was like, "That is not your personality at all. Like, what are you doing?" And I was like, "You're right." And because of her challenging me, I was like, why am I losing my sense of self? I love colors. I'm going to go and start
Mm,
wearing the brightest of bright colors and just enjoy being me. And that was so freeing in that moment to have that aha of, I don't have to assimilate to this work culture of dullness. Like, I can still be vibrant and have a personality while working here. And so that was me abandoning me for a moment in order to fit in, to be able
mhm.
to see growth and move within that company.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to distinguish fitting in from belonging, because fitting in automatically assumes
Mhm,
assimilation. And when you're assimilating, that requires
mhm,
self-abandonment on some level. Whereas belonging is truly showing up
mhm,
as you are, but of course you can't have that unless you
mhm.
have safety. And safety looks different for different people, and there are different kinds of safety. But it's really about being able to show up whole,
Yes.
all
Yes.
of you, with all your
Yes.
parts, being yourself. Doesn't mean you have to express all of those things all the
Right.
times, right? But being able to be in that space fully as who you are and be seen, embraced, or celebrated, at least on some level, at least to some degree, without repercussion. Um, And I think that's where the workplace trauma
Mhm.
comes in, is that when we go into these workplace environments and and we are not able to hold up or maintain all the energy that's required to attempt to
Yes.
fit in, and then we're punished
Yes.
for it. Oh, it hits
Mhm.
so hard. I mean, that's more than "I don't like my job." That's more than, "I'm bored at work." That's more than, "Ugh, I feel unfulfilled." That creates
Right.
trauma, and we wanna differentiate. between trauma and I don't know if this kind of field or this workplace
Right.
is right for me. Big, 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 big difference. So, how does somebody heal from that?
Well, I think the first step in any healing journey is finding that safe space to at least start sharing your story. So that way you can realize the emotions behind it and then give yourself space to process those emotions behind it. So that safe space could look like another colleague. It could look like a clinician like you or myself. But finding that safe space, acknowledging where you are, that you're experiencing these things, and then what feelings come up, and allowing yourself the opportunity to process those feelings. And then to help with that healing journey is to see, like, okay, can
Mhm.
I change my environment? Do I have control in that space? If I can, what changes can I make to better the environment? If I cannot, then is it time for me to move to a different environment? Because if you stay in that environment, you'll continue
Mhm.
to feel the same feelings.
I love what you're saying, Kristen, in terms of that identifying what's in your control and what's not in
Mhm,
your control, that by itself can start the healing journey. Like if you're in a position where you really can't leave without some major, major consequence, being able to name, like, okay, this is in my control, this is not
mhm.
in my control. This, you know, this person is expecting this of me. Um, and there's nothing I can change about that, you know? I can use my voice possibly and share concerns about it, if that's even safe, if
Exactly.
that's even safe. But then finding places that are maybe more in your control, like in your particular example, it's
Mhm,
how you're dressing.
mhm,
That it's like, well, I'm just going to dress this way. Another one for me was when I decided I have my hair straight right now, but I've decided I can wear my hair any way that I want. If I'm going to have a straight hair day, I can have
mhm,
a straight hair day. If I'm going to have a curly hair day, I can have a curly hair day. And, for me and my own identity, that was really important
mhm.
in the workplace and outside of the workplace as well, in terms of part of being North African is that I get to wear my hair any damn
Yes.
way I please,
Yes.
you know? And there's an empowerment part to that. Does that speak
Yes,
to
it
you as
does.
well?
I mean, when they start writing laws based on hair, that lets you know how important it is.
Oh, yeah, and that people are feeling
Yeah,
some kind of way about my
yeah.
hair. It's
Mhm,
hair, people. It's hair. One of the things I can remember when I first started the practice, the mental health practice, was the very first meeting we had, and I swear often, unapologetically, and I don't know if I maybe didn't for some reason and before somebody else beat me to it, and then somebody else swore, and then I got all these text messages and emails and phone calls, and there were maybe like 6 or 8 of us in the
mm,
practice at the time, and every person who swore, who said some kind of curse word, um, said, "I'm so sorry. I was really trying not to, and it slipped, and I'm so sorry. I was talking like you and I do when we're just on the phone with one another or when we're texting with one another or in a virtual meeting with one another, and I let it slip in this meeting, and I really wanna be more
mhm.
professional." They all use the
Professional.
word professional or being unprofessional. My response was we had a meeting a couple
Uh-huh.
of weeks later with the team and I said, "Look, we got to address this cursing thing. We started this space and we created this space so that we can decolonize our own mindsets and we can do things the way we want to do. And we get to redefine what
Mhm,
professional means. And our standards don't have to be informed by anything in the past, except that we're going to use resistance as a form of decolonization. And so the way that I define professionalism is by being kind, respectful, having a spirit of sharing, and having a spirit of
mhm.
learning. And you bring that, and that's professional in this space. And I remember everyone's eyes got really big, like,
I
wow.
remember that.
If you are in a position of leadership, I would just say you have the power to redefine what
Mhm.
professionalism means. And if you have that kind of power, I really encourage you to use it in a way that challenges some of the assumptions that we might have about
Mhm.
that space based on our previous experiences and also based on what dominant society has
Yes.
told us, which is incredibly oppressive, the messaging that we've received.
Funny you should say that, going back to my assimilating ways and overcoming that. One day I was wearing a really cute outfit and it had like pink in the outfit. So I decided to wear a pink lipstick with the outfit. And an older Black woman who worked in HR, who happened to be one of my, like, two people removed, like I knew her through a person. She decided to approach me in the cafeteria and she pulled me to the side and she was like, um, I wouldn't wear that lipstick any longer. Like, you shouldn't wear that here. And I was just taken aback, like, what? I thought I looked very nice. And everyone else had given me compliments, on the lipstick, but for her to pull me to the side and be like, you shouldn't do that. It took me a moment before I reacted. I blinked a few times and I was like, okay, thank you for your feedback. Um, but the fact that she had internalized the oppressive system, saying what we should and shouldn't wear as far as, you know, within this workspace, it rocked me for a moment.
You do not have to be white to be rooted
Mhm,
in whiteness. You do not have to be a man to be rooted in
mhm,
patriarchal values. You don't have to be a white man to be rooted in white patriarchal cis hetero values. And all of us, all of us are impacted by these systems. And I'm going to venture to say that all of us, on some level, at some point, have internalized those messages at some point. Meaning, like, let's translate that, or I'll be the interpreter here of what I just said. Meaning that without even realizing it, we've decided what's right,
yeah,
wrong, good, bad
yeah,
on some level that's not even based necessarily in our own values or what we actually
mhm,
believe is right, wrong,
mhm.
good, bad, because we haven't been given the opportunity to pause and actually examine those things, much less explore it.
Mona, even in me preparing for this podcast today, in my head, I was like, "Oh, I need to change and dress up." And I was like, "Wait, wait, wait. Girl, you have on clothes. Wear what you're wearing. You are fine.
You have
You have
on
on clothes.
clothes. I will say that was maybe the one
Just have on
standard,
some
like,
clothes. Like, why do I have to
show
dress
up for
up?
clothes.
No, it's okay."
I mean, and it's so funny, like, what we think actually looks
Yes.
good too. Like, I do not look cute in a
Yeah.
suit, okay? That is not a
Right.
cute look for me whatsoever. I like my airy
Yes.
little
Love it.
clothes, like, well, not little, like baggier kind of clothes that are flowy, that I'm comfortable in. I work better in
Mhm.
that environment, and I think I look cuter
Mhm.
if I'm
Yeah.
honest. But like these suits where like my arms are all stiff and everything, how is
Oh,
that even cute?
I
Like,
can't
how
wear
is
a
that
button-up shirt.
even?
They don't work for me. No. No.
But when we're told otherwise, and then we don't meet up to those expectations, and that is what can create this traumatic
Ooh.
workplace experience for us because we are held to really, I think we're talking about
Mhm.
expectations, but when we really look at it, I think like digging another layer deeper, it's also like
Yeah.
values, right? Like maybe the values that this leadership or this company have don't align with my
Yes.
own.
And I think another way that people can kind of vet out workplace values is look at their leadership team to see. So if you value diversity, if you like to be in an environment that maybe reflects you, look at the leadership team of that company, and that can tell you a lot as well. Do you see diversity on their leadership board? I can't tell you. Well, I won't tell you the names of the 2 employers I had, but I can tell you that the leadership teams for both of those employers did not look like me. So, yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. One of the things that I encourage people to ask is, I mean, I think it's one of the number one questions that's a non-negotiable to ask a potential employer is, how do you operationalize diversity, equity,
And belonging,
inclusion, and
yes.
belonging? And operationalizing means, what are you actually doing? What practices do you have in place, or what policies do you have in place? What behaviors are you engaging in, or what programs have you developed? That's what
Mhm,
operationalizing means. It means practical application. How are they practically demonstrating and engaging in diversity, equity, inclusion, and
mhm.
belonging? And so many people say, I'm not saying I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared. You'll hear me say this. I repeat this all the time because I think it's worth I don't think you can overstate it. But I'm scared to ask that. I don't want to ask that question. And I always say this: any employer who is actually
Mhm.
walking the talk will be
They
delighted.
want to
They
tell you
want
what
you
they've
to ask
created.
that question. They
Yes.
want to hear. They wanna
Yes.
brag, they wanna tell you what they've created, and you're so spot on too as far as, like, looking at leadership, looking at websites, looking at who's working there. When people come to the NOR Counseling
Mhm,
website, they look at our team of
mhm,
clinicians, and they go and read all the bios too, by the way, because we share our stories openly on there, and I cannot remember the last time that I actually had to recruit an employee to the
mm,
practice because they want to come and work there, because they immediately feel a sense of safety and they feel
mhm,
seen, embraced, celebrated without even, those are the 3 layers of belonging, without even having met
mhm,
any of us. But they feel like, "Oh, these are my people." There's a certain
mhm.
spirit there of openness because we share our stories. There's a certain spirit there of being embraced because they can just
Yep.
visually see that we come from different ethnic backgrounds. And oftentimes they can see that we have a diverse gender identities as
Yep.
well within our practice. They can read that we have a wide array of sexual identities
Mhm,
in our practice across the
mhm,
board, right? There's this sense of, oh, I'm safe. Even if they don't see the combination of their own
mhm.
identities there, because of the representation and because of the openness of our stories that we share there, and because we so openly state our values
Yeah.
unapologetically, people feel safe immediately. Even people from dominant cultures, they see that and they feel safe.
I have also had clients mention how much they appreciate our practice and what, viewing the website and what that really meant to them. They're like, I looked at your website and I see all the clinicians. And so it's not just, you know, touching other clinicians to see, oh, this is a safe space because it's a wide variety of clinicians from various backgrounds, but even our clients are able to go and see we don't just talk the talk, but we're walking the walk.
Absolutely. Okay, so question
Yes.
for you, Kristen, my
Okay.
last question that I love to ask
Okay.
everybody. What does belonging mean to you?
Ooh. So when I think of belonging, I do think of a space in which I'm able to feel that connection, not just within, but to others. And so I think belonging for me was something that I sought out from a young age. There was a big age gap with me and my sibling. And so I felt like I played by myself a lot and we moved around a lot. So like at a younger age, I was seeking out belonging. And now as an older person, I realized what I was doing as a child when I would try to make friends and being overly friendly and became this extroverted person. It was because I was seeking out belonging. And so I think belonging is a
Mhm.
part of me reaching out and connecting, but also wanting to feel connected to others. And so it's a big part of my life and a big part of my
Mhm.
world.
Mhm. And letting that world adapt to
Hmm.
you, where you're not always having to adapt to it because
Hmm.
we're worth it. We're worth it. We get to have the world adapt to us, and that's in the workplace, that's in our relationships, that's in
Yeah.
anywhere. I absolutely love having this conversation with you today, Kristen. Thank you so, so much. being here today and talking about your expertise in workplace trauma, something that I don't think gets
Mhm.
named enough. And so I'm honored that you're here to do that and so grateful for you. So
Thank you
thank you
for
for
the
being
space. Thank you
here.
for this
Love you
opportunity. I
so big.
appreciate you.